So, in continuation with what we have learned in the last class, we were actually dealing with the first type of emergency, which was the national emergency, and we were learning about the different effects of this national emergency. And in that effects, one of the most important thing is related to effect on fundamental rights. So we have learned that all the fundamental rights that we enjoy or we have provided by Article 19. Article 19 gives us Article 19 is actually dealing with the different fundamental rights that we have. So all those fundamental rights will be automatically suspended at the time when the proclamation of national emergency is made. And when this emergency period is expired, all these suspended articles or suspended fundamental rights will be revived. And also with respect to this, we can see that the last point that we stopped here, I think, the last class. The 44th Amendment Act mandates that the President cannot suspend the right to move to court for enforcement of fundamental rights guaranteed by Article 20 and 21. So we can say that the fundamental rights that have been provided by Article 20 and 21, that will remain as such. Okay. These articles or these fundamental rights will not be suspended. That is, if there is any violation in getting that fundamental right, then any person can move to the court. That is what is mentioned in Amendment 44th Amendment. It was in the year of 1978. So what is there actually in the Article 20 and 21? We will learn that next. All the fundamental rights will be covered in Article 19, and we'll have certain rights in Article 20 and 21. Article 20, I mean, these two articles or the fundamental rights provided by these two articles will be protected even during the time of emergency. That is what we have been provided with the 44th Amendment. What is Article 20? Protection in respect of conviction for offences. How that is been classified. No person shall be convicted. I'm mentioning about Article 20 and 21. Article 20 states that no person shall be convicted of any offence except for violation of law in force at the time of commission of the act. It will be complex when I read that. I will explain that afterwards. Except for violation of law in force at the time of commission of the act charged as an offence, nor be subjected to a penalty greater than that which might have been inflicted under the law in force at the time of commission of offence. In short, you can say that suppose a person has committed an offence. A person has violated a law today. And as per the law, there is a penalty or there is a punishment for that offence. We have a punishment, and a penalty for that offence as of today. Suppose that this punishment or this penalty is been revoked or cancelled, or it's been changed to another term after few days or after 1 year. That will not be applicable to that person. ഇന്ന് ചെയ്യുന്ന ക്രൈമിന് ലോ പറയുന്ന അനുസരിച്ച് ഇന്ന് പറയുന്ന അനുസരിച്ചുള്ള ശിക്ഷ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പെനാൽറ്റി ആയിരിക്കും കിട്ടുക. That is, he will not be charged or he will not be provided with a punishment which is not mentioned at the time of committing that crime or committing that offense. Offense ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് എന്താണോ ലോ പറയുന്നത് അതനുസരിച്ചുള്ള ശിക്ഷയായിരിക്കും പ്രൊവൈഡ് ചെയ്യുക. That is what in short we call it as no ex post facto law. You can see it over here. No ex post facto law. That is, a law will get changed. Right? Penalty in the crime as per the law today, if the penalty rate is 10,000 rupees, and after few days after few months, this penalty rate gets changed to some 25,000 or 50,000. That will not be applicable for that person who do a crime today. Okay, that's what Article 21st point says. So this will be protected. I mean, this fundamental right will be protected even at the time of emergency. And then coming to the second point, no person shall be prosecuted and punished for the same offense more than once. That is no double jeopardy. You can note this term, no double jeopardy. That is, for a particular crime, he may be prosecuted and punished only once. Okay, for a particular offense, a person shall be prosecuted and punished only once. Okay. Then the third point, that is no double jeopardy. Then the third point says that no person accused of any offense shall be compelled to be a witness against himself. That is no self-incrimination. That is, if a person commits an offense, he cannot be a witness for himself. Okay. സ്വന്തമായിട്ട് സാക്ഷി പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ല. That is, a person who is accused of an offense cannot be compelled to be a witness against himself. That is the third point says. So this comes as part of Article 20. This is an important article. Why this becomes important is this article remains protected even at the time of national emergency. That is, we can approach the court in case of any violation occurs to these fundamental rights. Then Article 21, protection of life and personal liberty. That's very important, right? From national emergency, if there is no protection of life and personal liberty, then any person can kill any other person, right? That will not be allowed. അത് സമ്മതിക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല. എമർജൻസി ഡിക്ലെയർ ചെയ്തു എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമുക്ക് വേറൊരാളുടെ ജീവൻ എടുക്കാനുള്ള അവകാശം ഉണ്ടാവില്ല. So this also will remain as such. This article, Article 21 also will remain as such even during the time of national emergency. It is protection of life and personal liberty. No person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. And this is a term that you can see very common in most of the sentences related to laws. That is, according to procedure established by law. So these are the two articles which remains protected even at the time of national emergency. So remember this, Article 20 and 21. Article 19 all fundamental rights will be suspended at the time of national emergency. Now you can see the three different national emergencies declared so far. You can note this, that 1975 will declare the last national emergency, and that ended around 1977. And remember that the 44th Amendment came only after this, after ending the last national emergency. Last national emergency കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടാണ് നമുക്ക് 44th Amendment വന്നത്. Remember that. So declarations made so far. This type of emergency, that is national emergency, has been proclaimed 3 times so far in our country. That is, the first one was during 1962, the second one in 1971, the third one 1975. The 1975 is considered as the ബാക്കി രണ്ട് നമ്മൾ അത്ര ഇതായിട്ട് ഓർക്കില്ല. But 1975 national emergency, it was a bit more tougher, you can say. So yeah, the first proclamation of national emergency was issued in October 1962 on account of Chinese aggression in the Northeast Frontier Agency and was enforced till January 1968. Remember the period from October 1962 to January 1968. Then the second proclamation of national emergency was made in 1971 and was in the wake of attack by Pakistan. And this was actually in relation to the Chinese, war with China. It was related to that. And the second one was in the wake of attack by Pakistan. And then the third one, even when the emergency was in operation, even when the second emergency was in operation. One second. Even when the second emergency was in operation, the third proclamation of national emergency was made in June 1975. 1971 second national emergency call ചെയ്തത്. And അത് കണ്ടിന്യൂ ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് തന്നെ in 1975 we had the proclamation for the third national emergency, and both these second and third proclamations were revoked or cancelled in March 1977. Okay, this is the period. You remember the period. This is important. എല്ലാ periods നിങ്ങൾ ഓർക്കണ്ട, but this is important with respect to national emergency. 1962, 71, and 75. 1962 to 68, 71 to 77, and 75 to 77. Remember that the second and third national emergencies were revoked at the same time. That is, they were cancelled at the same time. That was during March 1977. Hope these things are clear. I mean, at least some points that you should be, noting. We have learned about what should be the reasons, or what can be the reasons for calling a national emergency, and then how that procedure happens in Parliament that we have seen. Within 1 month, it has to be approved by the Parliament. It is not required that at the time of proclamation of emergency, it is to be approved. Approval കിട്ടിയിട്ട് മാത്രം നമുക്ക് proclaim ചെയ്യാം അങ്ങനെ വേണ്ട, but we can proclaim that, but it should get approval within 1 month of its proclamation. So all these things we have discussed previously. Grounds of declaration, then parliamentary approval and duration, revocation, how to revoke that, and then what are the effects on executive, legislative, and financial, then effects on fundamental rights, and finally we have seen how how many times this declaration has been made so far. Hope it's clear. Clear or not? Can we move? അടുത്ത ടോപ്പിക്കിലേക്ക് പോവാം. Is that okay? Hello. Okay. Moving on to the next topic. There is President's rule. So far we have learned about the first type of emergency. 3 types of emergencies are followed. The first one was the national emergency, then the President's rule, and finally the financial emergency. From Article 352 to Article 360. അതാണ് നമ്മുടെ emergency provisions പറയുന്ന articles എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. So the second one being the President's rule. You can see that Article 355 imposes a duty on the center to ensure that the government of every state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. So Article 355 says that whatever be the commands or whatever be the acts proposed by the center, according to Article 355, this center has to ensure that all the state governments are moving in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. That is, no state government is, we cannot say that a state government is completely, on its own legs. We cannot say that. It has to move in accordance with the provisions in the Constitution. If the center finds that, if the center finds that a particular state government is not moving in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution, then comes the President's rule. So it is a duty in the performance of which the center takes over the government of a state under Article 356. You can note this, Article 356. Article 355, it just says the duty of the center to ensure that state government is moving in accordance with the provisions of Constitution. Article 356 in fact says that this a particular, if a particular state is not moving in accordance with the Constitution, we will say that there is a failure of constitutional machinery in a state. That's the term that we use. So this President's rule is imposed when it is found that there is a failure of constitutional machinery in a state, and that President's rule is imposed as per the Article 356. Remember that 356 is the article which is corresponding to the President's rule, which is the second type of emergency. Then grounds of imposition. The President's rule can be proclaimed under Article 356 on 2 grounds. Article 356 empowers the President to issue a proclamation if he is satisfied that a situation has arisen in which the government of a state cannot be carried on in accordance with the provisions of constitution. നമ്മൾ already പറഞ്ഞു, whenever president feels that or president sees that a particular state is not moving in accordance with the constitution, then president's rule can be imposed. Then Article 365 says that whenever a state fails to comply with or to give effect to any direction from the center, it will be lawful from the president to hold that situation. Again, same. Any direction that is given by the center. If it is found that a state is moving against the constitution, that is constitutional failure in constitutional machinery. Then the second thing is that if any directions or orders given by the center is not, taken by the state. If a state fails to comply with or to give effect to any direction from the center, again the president will consider that particular state as behaving as an, there is a failure in constitutional machinery. These two conditions have been taken for imposing president's rule in a particular state. Then parliamentary approval and duration, you can see that we have already seen this in the case of national emergency. Now, in case of president's rule, a proclamation imposing president's rule must be approved by both the houses of parliament within 2 months from the date of its issue. However, if the proclamation of the president, and this is pretty much similar to that of we have learned in national emergency. National emergency സമയത്ത് നമ്മൾ ഇത് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. Same തന്നെയാണ്. If the proclamation of emergency, ഈ same sentence തന്നെയാണ് നമ്മൾ അവിടെയും യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. That is, the approval has to be taken within 30 days from the first sitting of Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha ആ സമയത്ത് ഡിസോൾവ് ചെയ്യുകയാണെങ്കിൽ it has to be approved within 30 days from the first sitting of Lok Sabha after its reconstitution. This is same as that of the previous case. അതുകൊണ്ട് അത് വീണ്ടും പറയുന്നില്ല. Then consequences of president's rule. And this is important because this you can learn this so that you will be able to write the functions of president also. President function എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് നമ്മൾ വേറൊരു മൊഡ്യൂൾ പഠിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. If you learn this, you can get some points from here also. ഇത് കോമൺ ആയിട്ട് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് പഠിക്കാവുന്ന കുറച്ച് കാര്യങ്ങളാണ്. The president acquires the following extraordinary powers when the president's rule is imposed in a state. He can take up the functions of the state government and powers vested in the governor or any other executive authority in the state. The president's rule നടക്കുന്ന കാര്യങ്ങളാണ്. The president can take up the functions of the state government and powers vested in the governor or any other executive authority in the state. He can declare that the powers of the state legislature are to be exercised by the parliament. State legislature powers നഷ്ടപ്പെടും. All those things which are to be done by state legislature will now be executed or exercised by the parliament. The president can take all other necessary steps, including the suspension of constitutional provisions relating to any body or authority in the state. So, in short, we can say that president will be in supreme power once the president's rule is imposed on a particular state as per Article 356. 356 അനുസരിച്ച് president's rule impose ചെയ്താൽ these will be the powers of president. He will be the deciding factor. Scope of judicial review. The 38th Amendment Act of 1975 made the satisfaction of the president in invoking Article 356 final and conclusive, which would not be challenged in any court or any ground. But this provision was subsequently deleted by 44th Amendment. That is, president's rule ne question ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല എന്ന് നമുക്ക് 34th Amendment Act ൽ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. That is, once the president's rule is imposed, it is final and it cannot be challenged in any court or any ground as per 38th Amendment Act of 1975. Remember, 38th Amendment Act ലാണ് ഈ പറയുന്ന president's rule നെ നമുക്ക് judicial ആയിട്ട് question ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല എന്നുള്ള point വന്നത്. But this provision was then later deleted in 44th Amendment Act of 1978. So this Amendment Act is very important in terms of emergency provisions, implying that the satisfaction of president is not beyond judicial review. That is, judicial review is possible. Once the president's rule is imposed, it is not final, can be questioned or it can be reviewed in judicial manner. 38th Amendment Act അങ്ങനെ question ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ലെന്നായിരുന്നു, but later in 44th Amendment Act of 1978, we say that, I mean, it was said that the satisfaction of president is not beyond judicial review. Then the last point was, last type of emergency was financial emergency. So national emergency, president's rule, and finally the financial emergency. Yes. So grounds of declaration. We will see the grounds of declaration for financial emergency. Article 360. Remember Article 360. So 352 in case of national emergency, 356 in the case of president's rule, and 360 in the case of financial emergency. So 360 empowers the president to proclaim a financial emergency if he is satisfied that a situation has arisen due to which the financial stability or credit of India or any part of its territory is threatened. If the president finds that the financial stability of any part of country is threatened, then according to Article 360, the president is empowered to proclaim a financial emergency. Then parliamentary approval and duration. A proclamation declaring financial emergency must be approved by both the houses of parliament within 2 months from the date of its issue. And again, this one is similar to that of the previous cases. Once approved by both the houses of parliament, the financial emergency continues indefinitely till it's revoked. Revoked it will be continued indefinitely. The proclamation of financial emergency, if it is done, it will continue indefinitely till it's revoked. So this thing, I mean, this statement, this you can learn, and it is very common to both all the three emergency types: national, president's rule, as well as financial emergency. So this you can learn it. It will be better. We are already national emergency already how this is related. This is actually related to whether the Lok Sabha is dissolved or not at the time of proclamation. If it is dissolved, then it has to be reconstituted, and within 30 days of the first sitting of Lok Sabha after reconstitution, the proclamation has to be approved by both the houses of parliament, provided Rajya Sabha has already approved that. So at least points three type of emergencies. Remember the articles basically and the grounds, that is on what basis these emergencies are declared. Points then effects. So this is regarding the parliamentary approval and grounds of declaration of financial emergency, and now we will see the effects of financial emergency. The extension of the executive authority of union over the financial matters of the states. That is, union will be having that. That is a very common thing. That is, union will be having the supreme power at the time of financial emergency. That is, executive authority of the union will be taking over the financial matters of the states as well. Then the basic thing is that the reduction of salaries and allowances of all or any class of persons serving in the state. Remember this, financial emergency samayathu basically the reduction of salaries and allowances of all or any class of persons serving in the state. Then reservation of all money bills or financial bills for the consideration of president after they are passed by the legislature of the state. Money bills and financial bills, once it is passed by the legislature of the state, it will be reviewed by it will be taken into consideration of the president at the time of financial emergency. Dhanagari bill money bills bills state legislature pass, I mean directly pass it has to be presented or it has to be taken to the consideration of president once it is passed in the legislature during the time of financial emergency. Financial emergency so the direction from the president for reduction of salaries and allowances of all or any class of persons serving the union, judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts. So rendu കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് basically effects of financial emergency പറയുന്നത്. ഒന്ന്, reduction of salary and allowances of this any class of persons serving the state or union. including the judges of Supreme Court. Second point is all the money bills or financial bills will be taken to the consideration of president after they are getting passed by the legislature of the state. These are the 2 points or two main effects of financial emergency. State legislature pass ചെയ്യുന്ന എല്ലാ money bills and financial bills, it has to be presented before the president for the final, final preparation to become an act. So these are the effects of financial emergency. And finally, we will see the criticism towards this emergency provision. Some members of the Constituent Assembly criticized the incorporation of emergency provision in the Constitution on the following grounds. Constituent Assembly, it was, നമ്മുടെ കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷൻ പ്രിപ്പയർ ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് ഫോം ചെയ്തതാണ് കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂന്റ് അസംബ്ലി. സോ അതിൽ കുറച്ച് വന്നിട്ടുള്ള കുറച്ച് ക്രിറ്റിസിസംസ് എന്തൊക്കെയാണെന്നുള്ളതാണ് പറയുന്നത് റിഗാർഡിംഗ് ദിസ് എമർജൻസി പ്രൊവിഷൻസ്. ഫസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് ഓൾ വി നോ ദാറ്റ് യൂണിയൻ ഒരു സുപ്രീം പവർ കിട്ടുന്നുണ്ട്. അതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ വൺ ക്രിറ്റിസിസം വാസ് ദാറ്റ് ദ ഫെഡറൽ ക്യാരക്ടർ ഓഫ് ദി കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷൻ വിൽ ബി ഡിസ്ട്രോയിഡ് ആൻഡ് ദ യൂണിയൻ വിൽ ബിക്കം ഓൾ പവർഫുൾ. That was one criticism, and that is correct also to an extent. Federal character in the sense both union as well as the state will be working hand in hand. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു ഫെഡറൽ ക്യാരക്ടർ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് അല്ല നമ്മുടെ രാജ്യം ഫെഡറൽ നേച്ചർ ആണെന്ന് നമ്മൾ പറയാൻ കാരണം both union and state has got its own responsibilities and its own rights and duties. So here that federal character of the constitution will be destroyed at the time of emergency. That is, the union will become all powerful. That the powers of state, both the union and the units, will entirely be concentrated in the hands of the union executive. The president will become a dictator. The financial autonomy of the state will be nullified. Fundamental rights will become meaningless, and as a result, the democratic foundation of the constitution will be destroyed. These all were the criticisms that were being, brought or that were being mentioned in the Constituent Assembly. Constitution frame ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്തുണ്ടായ ഡിസ്കഷൻസിൽ വന്ന ക്രിറ്റിസിസംസ് ആണ് ഈ പറയുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് ടു ആൻ എക്സ്റ്റെന്റ് വി ക്യാൻ സേ ദാറ്റ് ഓൾ ദീസ് പോയിന്റ്സ് ആർ കറക്റ്റ് ഓൾസോ. So these were the criticisms which are mentioned in Constituent Assembly, and you can note this. And yes, there comes to an end to the emergency provisions. Next, we will see another thing, that is CAG. You might have heard about this. It's actually a constitutional body. Constitutional body in the sense it is actually formed on the basis of an article in Constitution. അങ്ങനെയുള്ളതിനാണ് നമ്മൾ constitutional bodies എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. A body which is developed or which is which come into force as per an article in Constitution. Such bodies we will call it as a constitutional body. So CAG, or Comptroller and Auditor General of India, is one such constitutional body. So it is the apex authority responsible for external and internal audits of the expenses of national and state governments. It is most popularly known as CAG of India. നിങ്ങൾ കേട്ടിട്ടുള്ള ടൈം ആയിരിക്കും CAG എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. So you can note it as a constitutional body. Can you mention any other constitutional bodies that is in existence? വേറെ ഏതെങ്കിലും constitutional bodies നെ പറ്റി അറിയോ? Have you heard of that? CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General, is a constitutional body. Any other constitutional bodies? Adil, വേറെ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു constitutional body അറിയോ? Anyone? Any other constitutional bodies that you know? Adil. Election Commission. Election Commission is one such constitutional body. So Election Commission is formed in accordance with a particular article in the Constitution. Constitution provided the article അനുസരിച്ചാണ് ഒരു body form ചെയ്യുന്നതെങ്കിൽ we call it as a constitutional body. We have got I think around 18-19 constitutional bodies are there. So CAG is one such constitutional body, and we have so many commissions of that sort. We have the PSC commission, that is UPSC is there. Then we have Election Commission is there. State as well as Central Election Commission is there. Then SC/ST Commission is there. Then Official Language Commission is there. So I think around 19 commissions are there of that sort. Constitution provided in the around 18-19 commissions are there. So CAG, and what are the constitutional provisions? Part 5 of Indian Constitution describes the role and responsibilities of this office. The Comptroller and Auditor General is one of the few officers directly appointed by the President of India. What are the powers of Comptroller and Auditor General of India? Article 148 of the Constitution of India establishes the authority of this office. It states the following points in relation to the establishment and powers of CAG. The CAG or Comptroller and Auditor General is appointed by the President of India and can be removed from office only in the manner and on the grounds that a judge of a Supreme Court is removed. Okay, so the appointment of Comptroller and Auditor General is by the President of India. The person appointed to this office should take an oath of office before the President or any other person appointed by the office of President. That is the second point. The salary, service conditions, leaves of absence, pension, and age of retirement are determined by the Parliament of India and specified in the second schedule, such that the service conditions and salary will not be modified to the disadvantage of the incumbent during the tenure. Okay. എന്നുവെച്ചാൽ ഈ പറയുന്ന salary, service conditions, leaves of absence, pension, age of retirement, all these things are determined by the Parliament and specified in the second schedule. The CAG is not eligible for any further office after the end of the tenure, either in Government of India or any state government. So these are the things which are mentioned in Article 148. Appointment is done directly by the President of India, and he can be removed from the office only on grounds same as that of the judge of the Supreme Court. Then all his allowances, service conditions, etc. are determined by the Parliament of India. Then his oath should be taken before the President of India or any other person who has been appointed by the office of President. Then powers and functions of the CAG are subject to the provisions of the Indian Constitution and any acts of Parliament along with the service conditions for the Indian Audits and Account Department. The rules governing these would be prescribed by the President in consultation with the incumbent. And in general, you just think that the main function of CAG or Comptroller and Auditor General of India is to audit both the revenues and expenditure of central as well as state governments and any other autonomous bodies which are coming under the governments. Comptroller and Auditor General's basic function അല്ലെങ്കിൽ major function എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് auditing the expenditure and revenues of state government as well as central government. Okay, auditing the expenditure as well as revenues of both the state as well as the central governments and any other autonomous bodies which are financially supported or which are financed by the government. Government finance agencies, or autonomous bodies ആയിരിക്കും, സ്വയംഭരണ ഉള്ള bodies ആയിരിക്കും, but which are financed by government. അങ്ങനെയുള്ള autonomous bodiesന്റെയും ഓഡിറ്റിംഗ് നടത്തുന്ന ഏജൻസി അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഓഡിറ്റിംഗ് നടത്തുന്ന ഒരു കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷണൽ ബോഡിയാണ് കൺട്രോളർ ആൻഡ് ഓഡിറ്റർ ജനറൽ, which performs the auditing of expenditures and revenues of state as well as central or union governments. That is a basic function that you need to remember. So in order to be able to discharge duties effectively, certain privileges and powers which facilitate the process of auditing have been given to this office. The following are the major powers of the CAG. You can see the powers. The controller, the CAG or his staff can inspect any office of the organizations which are subjected to his audit. He can inspect any office of the organizations which are subject to his audit. He and his staff can scrutinize the transactions of the government and question the administration regarding the various aspects of these transactions. After scrutinizing the transaction, the CAG may withdraw his objections, or if he finds them serious, incorporate them in his report, which is submitted to the parliament. So first thing is that he can visit any office or he can inspect any office which are subject to his audit. Then he or his staff can scrutinize the transactions of the government. Then after scrutinizing the transactions, if he finds any issues, serious issues, then he will include that in his report and it will be submitted to the parliament. To enable the office to perform this function smoothly, he is endowed with full access to all financial records, including books, papers, and documents. CAG is given with full access to all the financial records, including books, papers, and documents. Moreover, the CAG has the freedom to ask for relevant information from any person or organization. His right to call for information and accounts is statutory, as was affirmed by the order made by Government of India in 1936 and in order to enforce the Act of 1935. And you just remember the basic things. He has the freedom to ask for relevant information from any person or any organization which is subject to his audit. ഒരു auditing constitutional body ആണ് CAG എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. It has the right to inspect any office of any organization which is subject to his audit, and the report will be finally submitted before the parliament also. So the rest we will discuss in the next class. And mark your attendance. Thank you.